Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Data Room. Today, I'm in downtown Houston in the Allthenticate office with Chad Spensky. I first met him as a guest speaker in my Founder's Journey class, and I'm going to pass it off to you, Chad, to tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself.
Howdy. So I founded Authenticate because I was really sick of passwords. I started my life as a hacker, breaking into everything. And then I was in grad school. I kind of got frustrated to the point that if the whole world's broken, my grandpa always told me if you want to do something right, you had to do it yourself. So this is me taking that advice to heart and doing it myself. So the idea is you're going to use your smartphone to unlock everything in your life. Ultimately, it's going to be your doors, your computers, your websites. You can send money, you can vote for presidents, you can unlock cars, the whole gamut in a way that is actually incredibly secure.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible technology, and I know when you first came to our class, I was impressed by the work that you guys have been doing, and we'll definitely dive a lot more into that shortly. But before we get into that, the first question I like to start every guest with is, why did you agree to come on this podcast?
I think I told you when you came to my office, just the persistence. Like you have this tenacity, you clearly have a goal and you're working hard to achieve it. So, always like to support people that have visions and are willing to put into work to make them turn into reality.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful office, and it's a great pleasure to meet you again. So let's go back, like, kind of to your childhood and your early days. Like, how did you first get into hacking or computers in general, and how did it kind of escalate into now a company?
So that my early entrepreneurial days were bootlegging CDs using Napster. So I would download all of the songs that went on the album. I'd burn them on a CD and then I would print all the labels and print the insets and everything. And then I was selling those in middle school for, I don't know, $5 or $10. But I ended up making a decent amount of money to the point my parents found like a wad of cash in the office. I'm like, what is this?
I actually, before you continue with your story, I resonate with that so much. In middle school, I sold yo-yos, and I would just keep all my money in an envelope, and I had like hundreds of dollars just in this envelope, and my dad found it. It's just like, what is this?
Yeah. So that was my first like taste of it. And then my brother, who's 6 years older, went to college and came back from college and was like, man, I found this like chat program where you could download games and movies for free. I'm like, what I must understand what this is. It was called Internet Relay Chat. MIRC was the chat client that I used. And then like I got into that, just kept asking the question, like, where do they get it? Yeah, but where do they get it? Like, okay, I downloaded Tomb Raider, but like where did they get Tomb Raider? And then I had the ISPs reach out, they caught me illegally distributing movies. My parents started questioning my hobbies. So then I like really locked up the security. It's like, okay, I have to get to the source sooner than later because being out here on the front lines is too risky legally. And yeah, I went literally all the way down the rabbit hole. Like there was no deeper you could have gone, and the internet piracy world was one of the top people in that scene back in the day. It was called The Scene.
The scene. Wow. So you like literally became one of the most prominent sort of hackers or people in the US, you would say?
I always sucked at hacking. I would say in the world, I ran a service that was used by most of the top internet pirates on Earth. And I was 17 at the time, 16 or 17. And I
And
was so freaked that people would find out my age. Like,
yeah, did you realize how significant it was at the time, or is more just like
mm,
you're kind of just doing it for fun?
no, I was just having a blast. I didn't sell anything for money. And like even writing my college application, like I didn't realize now when I look back at it now, I'm like, oh my God, like I would accept that kid in a heartbeat to any position ever. Like my database at the time, I was handling something like 1,000 queries a second. And this was back in 2004 for a server running out of my parents' basement. Like I had a lot of users and a ton of traffic all surrounding this thing, and I wrote all the custom code and websites and everything just to run the service just because I thought it was fun and I wanted to download games. Like that was it. And then like in hindsight and like a lot of the skills that I learned that I taught myself then, like I was also early in like the Xbox modding scene. So I modded my NES, I modded my Sega, modded my Xbox, my PlayStation 2, my Wii. So I was like really big in that scene. And I ended up using a lot of those skills when I was doing like hacking for the DoD, which was really interesting to have that childhood hobby turn into a career.
Right, and I'll love to talk a little bit more about kind of your professional career, but first, like, so when you were doing this, right, you said it was for fun, and you were kind of just. I think you might have mentioned in my class you were naturally good at it. I want to talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you become so good at it? Was it just it came very naturally to you, or you spent countless hours learning this skill? Like, how did you get so good at just computers in general?
Just the passion. Like I loved it. I thought I was obsessed with hackers. Like when The Matrix came out, that was like, oh, that was like the best movie ever. My screen name on AOL Instant Messenger was Elite Hacker 13. Like I just the whole idea of being a hacker to me was like mesmerizing. And like I would come home from school, whatever, like 4 o'clock in high school,
Yeah.
do whatever social things I would do with my friends, and then I was up probably until 3 or 4 a.m. every single night doing this stuff. So like when I was reading Malcolm Gladwell's book about put in 10,000 hours to become an expert, I had to have been close to my 10,000 hours like freshman year of college, just because I put in so many hours every day, just like hanging out on IRC, making websites. Like I'd make websites and stuff for everything. I had a website for me and my friends that upload funny videos that we found, kind of like College Humor. I wanted to be able to get text messages when I had appointments, so I made a website that had a calendar, and you could actually text the website to add events, and it would text you like, "Hey, you have a doctor's appointment in an hour," like before Google Calendar existed.
Yeah.
So it's just like I don't know, I was just obsessed with this thing, and then I always wanted to be a hacker. I always sucked at it, but programming I was good at, so the hackers liked me because I could program things for them, and then they would hack people for me when I asked them. I didn't really get good at hacking until I worked in MIT. Like I read all the books in grad school and like loved it. But that was like once I became a professional is the point where like really took off. And now at the point where, the can you hack blank question mark question comes
Mhm.
up and the answer is always yes. This is, I don't know, fun, awkward, weird, but
Wow. I mean, I'm just like impressed how ingrained you were at such an early age and how many hours you said you spent almost probably 10,000 hours by freshman year college. That's just insane to me. And that makes me think like I need to stay up later and get on the grind a little bit more.
it was not a healthy habit, that's for sure. Like I slept through most of high school. I
Yeah.
was definitely, again, like in hindsight, just kind of a stereotypical hacker kid. Like I got pretty much straight A's. But I was the kid who'd be laying there with drool all over my book, and you wake me up I'm like, oh, because I was up till 5 a.m. doing questionable illegal things on a computer.
Wow. Well, so then how did you go from, college student kind of drooling in school and staying up super late at night doing stuff more for fun to like professional in a more professional setting? Was that just because of college and you learned about more job opportunities, or how did that transition look?
So I actually fought becoming a professional for a long time. My freshman year of college, I did lawn service. My sophomore junior year, or freshman sophomore year, I worked at a water treatment plant. And then junior year, I wanted a job, but I didn't want to be a computer nerd. That was like my anti thing. I grew up on a farm surrounded by a bunch of football players, and like I'm not a computer nerd. Like I ride dirt bikes, like I never wanted to like affiliate with that
Hmm.
as a profession. And then it wasn't until junior year where I couldn't even get a job being a valet at a local like hospital. Like I just want to park cars, like and then I finally cracked and went and got a really good job as a lead web developer at the University of Pittsburgh for a year and worked for a research team there. My boss there wrote me apparently very good letters of rec. That's when I got into grad school for bioinformatics. That's what the research team I was working with.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I got into 9 of the 11 schools that I applied to for bioinformatics that I met who ultimately became my PhD advisor. And he was like he's a cybersecurity guy. He was telling me that he's studying underground economies. This was like an off the cuff lunch conversation with an unrelated professor to the guy who hired me. And I was like, what do you know about underground economies? Like
You
I
might
know a thing
know a
or
thing or two.
two. And that was the first thing that tipped me off. He was like describing what computer security was, and my whole life I treated them as like these complete idiots that had no clue what they were doing, and we just had our way with computers because they were incompetent at their jobs. I was like, wait, you could like get a career with the hacking part of this? I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. So I switched over, I ended up going to the University of North Carolina for bioinformatics, but I switched over to security, took the offer there, got really, really into it. Like for the first time ever, my hobby that I stayed up every night doing, like had a career path, which was really cool. And then I got hired at Lincoln Laboratory as an intern, ended up dropping out of my PhD, becoming a professional at 25, loved it, kept pursuing what became this company that latched onto that idea in 2009.
Good.
And then by 2015, we had a patent filed, wanted to commercialize it. I still wanted to finish the doctorate. I felt like I had unfinished business. So in parallel, I went back to UCSB, study under the first professor ever who tipped me off that cybersecurity was a career decision, finished my degree with him, and then launched the company 2 days after I graduated.
Wow. That's an amazing journey. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, honestly. I guess the first question I want to ask is how did your kind of like mindset and goals evolve as you were exposed to these new opportunities, right? Like when you were in high school, you kind of wanted to be a hacker. Then in college, you're like, well, I don't want to be a hacker like on the face of it, like to my peers in my community. And then, you started learning about these research opportunities. So how did your kind of like goals and maybe like career ambitions kind of evolve throughout that time?
So the biggest moment in my life I remember, and I still have like there's a rap lyric by Jay-Z that we have hanging on our wall here to remind everybody that works here. It says difficult takes a day, impossible takes a week. So that was, I think, like the biggest eye opener. Like getting into grad school was like it was a reasonable achievement. It was something I never thought I would do it as a kid, but it's like it seemed attainable.
Mm,
Getting hired at MIT as a hacker, like doing offensive security, like that was impossible as like a middle class, lower middle class kid from West Virginia on a farm
yeah.
to think that like I get to look at my employee ID and it says MIT staff on it. It's like, oh my God. And I was the lead PI on these like pretty intense research projects. I think that like that kind of unlocked the rest of the story because then like from that point on, it was like there was no impossibility on Earth, and I still truly believe that. But like when people tell you something's impossible, it only means it's impossible to them,
Mm,
right? Like there's many, many things in my life that people told me was impossible. It's like when I was in grad school, I mean, I kind of always had that mentality, but MIT unlocked it. I always wanted to play football, but I was 5'1" when I started high school. So like it wasn't really in the cards, right? Like I could have played or got the crap kicked out of me.
yeah.
But I was getting my doctorate and they had a club team and I walked on a like played club for 3 years while getting a PhD and went from like 140 pound scrawny computer hacking kid to 185 pounds with no like no fat on me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I think just like and I quote this a lot. There's a book called, Hard Things, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. But just like doing hard things for the sake of it being hard really is like kind of what drives my trajectory at this point. Like when I find a fork in the road, I will intentionally take the harder one
Hmm.
just to try to maximize what I'm doing with my life.
Is that what kind of pushed you to start Authenticate? Like you saw it as a very difficult thing to kind of start your own business and you just wanted to prove to yourself that you could?
Yeah, so I did pretty well in grad school. I was in parallel thinking of starting this business and going to be a professor. And I like started to get callbacks and interviews were getting set up for professorship positions. And it was one of those moments like I went home for Christmas and then just panicked. I was like, if I don't do this now, when will I ever do this? And it sounds like the easy cop out solution, right? Like the world is in need of a solution. Everybody is getting hacked. Everyone hates their passwords. Like this is like a dire state for cybersecurity. And I don't want to just be the person, sitting in my ivory tower publishing papers, hoping that someday somebody will implement them.
Yeah.
So yeah, very much so. It's like I'll regret this forever if I don't do it.
Did you almost feel as like basically one of the world experts at this point, did you feel almost a sense of responsibility to make security more available to people? Like you're probably one of only a few hundred, maybe a few thousand people with that level of knowledge and expertise in the whole world. Like, did that weigh on you at all?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because it's one of those things like I thought it'd be done by the time I was out of grad school, actually. I was like, okay, I'm going back to my doctorate. It's going to take 5 years. In 5 years, somebody will have cracked, the password problem. We've been beating on this thing for 60 years. Seems like we're getting towards the end. And then when I graduated 5 years later and effectively no progress had been made,
Mm.
it was like, okay, I trained myself my entire life to be one of the best in the world at this. Like, if not me, then who?
I
Right?
love that you said that. I say that all the time. I say that
Yeah,
almost on
and
a
it's
daily
like if not
basis.
now, then when? If not you, then who? Like those are great
Yeah,
questions to ask yourself. And it's like both of those questions I had no answer to. It's like now is perfect time, and if it's not me, no one else is gonna do this because
right.
it sucks. It's not fun. It's painful. It requires insane hours, and it's incredibly high risk.
Yeah. Well, then I guess like first of all, we just I gotta give you more accolades for saying if not me then who because that I literally say that on a daily basis. I love that. It's one of my favorite things. It's just like you said, if there's no one, if you see the problem and you've spent 5 years kind of sitting on the sidelines and just learning about more and more about it, but then still no one's acting on it, at some point it falls on you, right?
Yes.
At some point it falls on you.
Yeah.
But now I want to talk a little bit. I mean, you mentioned this is like a very difficult and risky thing. Like, tell the viewers like what does it mean to really have your own company and how hard do you really have to work?
It makes my PhD feel easy, if that is any consolation. I've said that to my friends, and they're like, Chad, you can't say that. Like, we all got a PhD, it was really hard. I'm like, I can say that because I got a PhD, half a PhD, and started a company. Like, I think I'm justified in saying that. I think the hardest part for me, at least, is like now there are other people involved, right? If you fail at your PhD, you fail. That's it. No one else really cares. Your advisor is going to be fine. They have tenure. Your colleagues are going to be fine, right? When you start your own company, you now are pulling a bunch of other people into your idea.
Mhm.
They're believing in you, they're trusting you, and it is 100% on you to make good on that promise. So that for me, like the mental burden of that was really hard. The hours, I've my whole life I've never worked more than 40 hours a week. In grad school, I was honestly working like 35 hours a week. Just because like I'm really strict on what I thought was like a life work balance. So I was like, okay, I want to make sure I have time after work to go play basketball, go play volleyball, whatever. And then when I started my company, I was like, work-life balance. I'm doing that. But then the lines get so blurry because the thing I love doing is now my career and I'm highly invested in it. And I have a bunch of other people highly invested in it. So it's like at 5 p.m., would I rather play basketball or would I rather do this thing that I've worked my whole life to do? It's like, honestly, I'd rather do this thing I
Yeah,
love doing. Like, even now, I have to like ask my fiance on Sundays. I'm like, I want to go work. Like, I know it's weird, but like, I feel like we're in a good position. You got your own thing
yeah.
going on today. Like, I'm gonna go in the office. So, I mean, on average, I do probably put in like 10 to 12 hours every weekday. I keep weekends very sacred, so I don't touch weekends.
Mhm.
And even if I do like work on the weekend, I come in and like code, like the thing that I actually enjoy as a hobby, but not, I'm not checking emails and doing work related things.
Mhm.
And it is like, yeah, I've read one of the books. I know I read a ton of books, but it was talking about like as a startup founder, you really have to treat your body and yourself as a professional athlete would. And I agree with that 100%. Having
Yeah.
been a club athlete and played at a high level, like I'm pushing my body to the absolute limit every single day. Like mentally, physically, nutrition. I make sure I nap every day. I go to the gym every morning. Like you just everything has to be aligned. Your social life, your family life, like it all has to be in place because it is so time strict.
Yeah.
Like you cannot waste hours in a week with this kind of lifestyle if you're going to succeed.
So even at this point, though your work-life balance has sort of shifted a little bit more towards work, would you say that you still believe in work-life balance as a concept? Just because I've heard from some people like there is no such thing as work-life balance. Like if you really want it, you just gotta keep working like all your waking hours, give everything you have towards your goal.
Yes, as a concept, it's a thing. You should do that. One of the biggest regrets I hear from, successful CEOs farther on than me are always like they always regret not spending more time with their family and friends. Like that is just unanimously true of everybody I talk to because I'll tell them how many hours I'm putting in and they always push back. Like that's my only regret. My only regret. There's one caveat to that. that I hear that regret from all of the successful CEOs and founders, right? So like even though they regret it, there is a question, would they be have, as successful had they not made that sacrifice?
Yeah.
That I think is hard to answer. So I do think you should strive for it. I think it is important to like make sure that I mean even now I still play beach volleyball at you know reasonably often. I have a good group of friends. I can maintain a pretty high level. I push myself really hard at the gym to try to keep my
Mhm.
athleticism to like, above average levels. So I definitely believe in it. But again, in high school when I was, you know, working all night every day, like that was my hobby. Like that was my balance. Like the work, some call it work, but it's actually, things I enjoy.
Right. Okay, so now let's go to the gym next because I personally started going to the gym in my sophomore year of college. Now I'm a junior in college. And I started going like earlier and earlier in the morning to the point where now I go at 6 a.m. right as the gym opens. What, from your perspective, like what is the value of the gym and what is your kind of overarching philosophy towards the gym?
So the reason I started working out is because I wanted a six pack when I was a teenager. Then I got more into it for just like the end effects of it. Like I like just being fit. Like if a sport came up, I like being able to play that sport and do it well. Then it really transformed and I played a competitive sport. So when I played club football, then I was actually like working out for like safety, right? Like I needed to be faster, stronger, and bigger than
Yeah,
the other guy, or I'm gonna end up in the hospital. And that was like very clear. And that kind of transformed like my whole gym routine for the rest of my life. So like I went from exercise to training. And I now realize like how different those are. Like when you're training, you're in pain the whole time. You're doing burpees, you're doing like crazy stuff that just sucks. But
yeah,
the reward at the end of that painful part is so much bigger than just going and doing a couple curls.
right.
So I now work out. I'm generally at the gym by like 6:37 is kind of my goal, and then to get in the office by 8:30.
Okay.
And I found that after I played football, I went into maintaining mode for about a decade. Like I was like, okay, I can maintain my strength. Last year is when I made an effort to go back to training instead of working out. I'm really glad I did. Like, and back to the thing of just like training your willpower and doing hard things because they're hard. Like I have a lot of friends that enjoy the gym. I've never understood them. So I'm like, the gym hurts. Like it is painful, it is miserable, and that is the point of it. Like
Yeah.
the end result is the enjoyable part, not the process. And who was it? There's I don't know, some NBA star that's in the Hall of Fame. He was describing what it means to be a professional. He's like, being a professional is doing the things you enjoy, even on the days you don't want to do them.
Mm.
And I think for me, that is kind of like I don't know why I put myself through this pain every day. Like I want to live longer. There's all the health benefits, but there's also just the like I didn't want to do this. I did it, and at the end of it, I was happy I did it. Right? You kind of like train your
Yeah.
brain that like just because you don't want to do something doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do, and you can get in this nice like cycle that's now like a positive trigger. Like, oh, this seems hard and miserable. I bet on the other side there's something good.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I grew up playing tennis like competitively. I was thinking about college tennis at one point, and I know exactly what you mean. Like even though tennis was what I loved doing, like I would choose to play it in my free time. There were days where like I didn't want to go to that another lesson or I didn't want to go and like do a workout. But then, like you said, on the other side of it, you feel like so much better about yourself and like you know that you achieved like whatever it was in that time span, and then for me, there was always a nice meal on the other side that I could look forward to. But I
Yeah,
definitely resonate with
I
that.
went from a scrawny hacker to a kid that could level a running back and decleat him. Like it was fun.
And don't you feel you just like feel more confident, more like a beast, right? Because I that's something I noticed when I started going to the gym. I probably gained like 10 pounds and just I definitely like look bigger. And I feel like more confident because of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you just become more in tune with your body, which is really nice. I think just as like a general kind of spiritual comment, right? It's like you kind of understand yourself more. You can actually tell a difference when you eat something different. So you're like, oh, I was actually stronger today. Or like when
Hmm.
you don't work out for a week, you actually feel it. You're like, oh, I feel a little sluggish. Like, I don't know, I think it's just nice to kind of like understand what you're capable of.
Yeah, for sure. And now let's go back to the nap. So sleep in general, like how much do you sleep at night? What time do you generally go to sleep? And how often do you take naps?
10 to 6 is always my goal. I'm pretty strict about getting my 8 hours every night. Um, and then the naps are pretty much dictated with how brutal my gym session was in the morning. But most days I'll take like a 10 to 20 minute nap after lunch. And that was one of the things that I grew up with this mentality, like blue collar culture, like naps are mean you're lazy and you're working hard. And then when I was in academia, I kept reading all these studies that kept promoting naps, that it's like the only way to actually like rebound your cognitive ability. Coffee just kind of masked the effects, but like napping has actually been shown scientifically to like cognitively get you back to where you were when you woke up. So it's like one of those things. It's like, okay, if I'm a scientist and I expect people to read my work and take it seriously, like I'd be a complete hypocrite if I just read like 15 studies back to back that said the same thing, and I'm like, nah, I don't believe it. So like, okay, I'll try it. So I started it in grad school, and it really does seem to help. Yeah,
Even just a 10-minute nap is a big difference maker for you.
yeah. Even like some days, like I won't even actually like fall asleep, but just like to lay down, like, and after lunch, it tends to be a good time as like you're digesting food. Just like lay down, kind of relax, like free your brain of whatever you're working on. I don't know if I can meditate. I've tried to meditate so many times. I might be meditating. I don't know like really what the major difference is, but
Yeah.
something to just like kind of release and then like reset with like a clean brain. It it feels nice.
Okay. Yeah, I personally like take naps. Like I came from we're in high school and I would have like such an intense tennis schedule. I'd like come home and just try to nap any second I could because then I would have to stay up late playing video games and doing homework every night
Yeah.
too. So I definitely like grew up taking naps. My parents take naps and now that I'm in college, my roommates give me a lot of crap for taking naps though. But now that you're saying it's backed scientifically, I
It
have more
is. And
arguments of
one of the greatest computer scientists ever lived, Fred Brooks. So he created software engineering, small field, it's doing okay, and he invented the byte. He had on his calendar every day, nap time. Like, and he had like a little cot in his office and he would lay down every day and take a nap and it was like blocked off every day. He was really, really strict on his time management, like how he blocks his time and napping. That was another like cool life lesson, I guess. So like you need to also put things on your calendar that you enjoy doing. A lot of people's calendars are filled with just like things they hate. I have
Mhm.
this meeting, I have this other thing, I have this doctor's appointment, right?
Yeah,
But like I actually started doing this a while ago, but like blocking off. Like I have my Saturday mornings blocked off for volleyball. It's not like a lot of people are trying to book stuff on Saturday mornings, but like it reminds me
yeah,
that it's there. And I have the
right,
gym blocked off every morning. Like I put on my calendar that like, hey, training days are Tuesday, Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30. Like be there,
yeah.
show up.
I like that. I actually don't have the gym on my calendar right now, but I probably will add it. I definitely like that approach. How, I mean, I'm sure, like, obviously, you use some kind of calendar, everyone does, but how, like, rigorously do you plan every day? Like, I've heard Elon Musk plans every day in 5-minute increments. How do you go about that?
I've gone back and forth on this. The current one that I'm trying is called time boxing. So you pick the three most important tasks of the day and you put those in your time box. And then below that, you have like a brain dump in the morning of like everything that you think you could get done in that day. And the goal is really like if you get those three main things done, you can like rest easy and it kind of helps free the brain. Um, I like front and end loading my calendars with the stuff I don't like. So Mondays are all of our planning meetings. Not that I don't like them, but they're not, work. It's more just like administrative things.
Hmm.
And then I'll block off my Tuesday, Thursdays to be like hyper productivity days. So it's like, okay, Monday we plan everything. Tuesday, I don't take many meetings. I kind of just hustle. Wednesday, midday, I have to take some meetings because you can't push everybody off till Friday. And then Thursday, I try to get back and like get in flow. So I really like Tuesday, Thursday are kind of like my flow days. And then Friday, we kind of recap everything and have Fridays. We try to keep them relatively relaxed. Like work really hard the first 4 days, and then Fridays, everybody goes around, talks about what they did, and then you can kind of do whatever you need to free your mind for the weekend.
Yeah, so I guess with that, what is your philosophy with I mean, I see maybe about 10 people in the office. I'm not sure how big your total team is, but what is your philosophy with like meetings and important is it to keep I mean, obviously it's important to keep everyone on the same page. Like, are bi-weekly meetings the best way to do that?
We do weekly like planning meetings, and then the engineering team will do morning like sync ups, but they're really quick, like 10 minutes. Just like pretty much, hey, does anybody need help before we get the day started so we can unblock first thing in the morning. I really like the weekly cadence where like we keep our meetings really short, and we have a standing policy here that if the meeting is not useful, you should just leave and no feelings will be hurt. And if
Okay.
it's not useful, like you don't have to show up. That was one of the biggest things I started doing in my career when I was at MIT. If I didn't like a meeting and didn't find it useful, I stopped going. People hated me. There was like a lot of blowback about Chad's a jerk and he thinks he's better than us. But then like my personal productivity was so much better. I'm like, I don't find this meeting useful. And I was upfront with people.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a no-show. I just told them like I don't find this useful. I'm going to be removing it from my calendar.
Mm.
If you think I'm wrong, please let me know.
Yeah. Well, and it almost puts more pressure on whoever's organizing the meeting to make it more useful to you. So
Yeah.
I guess in terms of your company, it's like more pressure on you or whoever's organizing the meeting
Yeah, and
to
when I
make
was
sure
a
it's
professor, I
useful.
told my students that. I was like, there is no attendance policy. If you don't find the lectures valuable or interesting, I have failed as a professor, and that's on me. And you not showing up is a great feedback that I suck at my job. Like, if everyone stops showing in lecture two, then like, yeah, I probably should change and do something better.
Yeah.
And
I wish
yeah,
my professors did that.
yeah, I mean, I think it really is like if people stop showing up, then it's a great feedback that that meeting probably is useless, and the more meetings you can cut down on, the better, right? Like you want them to be valuable, and it scales interestingly, right? If there's a meeting with two people and it sucks, you wasted two people's hour. But like if you do an all hands with 100 people and that meeting was not useful, you wasted 100 hours that could have been spent doing something useful.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. And it's totally accurate, right? Like all those people could have been moving the company forward along their various dimensions.
Exactly.
So I guess now we've kind of transitioned back into Authenticate. Where are you guys right now as a company and kind of what's been on your mind as a CEO recently?
So where we are as a company, we raised our first like institutional money last year. We had our pre-seed last
Nice.
year. We're about to close our seed round. We hired our first like full-time core team about a year ago. So going from kind of, like the team that got the idea off the ground and made the first dollars to now like, okay, there's a full engineering team here. We have big infrastructure. Um, the biggest thing now really is just customer success. We're kind of at that stage in our growth life cycle. We're like, okay, we built products, people like them, we're selling them, we're scaling them. And, how do you keep everybody happy during that process and make sure the user experience is good and that the onboarding makes sense and, excuse me, that our products are intuitive and they don't have to reach out to us for help because,
Mhm.
again, that doesn't scale well. It scales with 5 users, it doesn't scale with 5,000, it really
Yeah.
doesn't scale with 5 million.
Awesome. Well, where do you think kind of the end game is for Authenticate? Do you think this could be Fortune 500 company? Do you think this is a startup and you'll get a nice exit? Like, where do you see this going?
The only end that I want to happen with this that would make it useful to the world is that it should power everything. Like we're kind of, I don't know, it should be like the layer under the internet, right? The identity layer that was lacking from the first internet. So a lot of people call it Web 3.0. I didn't learn that phrase until way later after we started doing this. But for this to be useful, it has to be used at scale, where every time you need to authenticate, you can use hardware on your phone to do this in a secure way. So my goal is that we become the same sticker that Intel was, where it always said like Intel inside, right?
Hmm.
That like you could identify a product as being good if it says powered by Authenticate, because you will then know that, oh, this financial transaction actually uses good security mechanisms to identify me, and that I can verify that, I sent the right amount of money to the right person. Like I'm closing on a house this week and I have to wire transfer somebody money. And it still like blows my mind that I have to like get on a phone call, write the number down, make sure I didn't write it down incorrectly because when I wire it, it's like that's it, money's gone. And
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's, I wrote a one and it looked like a seven, like this is a nightmare. Like Authenticate solves that problem. Like I just like, hey, I want to wire this to whatever, this Wells Fargo bank account, and it's this number, and it pops up, and then when it pops up, it's hardware backed, it's secure. I verify with the number that I'm supposed to go. I could even have like the other party participating in this, like that I met in person and tap their phones. Like that kind of stuff really annoys me. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm not really financially motivated on like where financially we'll get as a company,
Mhm.
but I really wanted to get to the point where a majority of products on Earth use the stuff that we built so that society can just like move on from
Yeah.
this phase of like everybody getting hacked all the time for just like seemingly obvious reasons. Like I'm really annoyed with it, and I want to get to the point where, hey, we probably won't be a household name, but we'll be in all the products that are household names.
Yeah, I love that vision. It's you keep saying like society and everybody. I think that's a really like broad vision for the world, and I respect that a lot. And kind of on that note of like thinking big, there's one other kind of question I really wanted to ask you, and it comes from Peter Thiel, who's constantly thinking about, world moving kind of innovations. And his question is, what is an important truth that you believe in that most people disagree with?
I just saw that one of my friends is reading that his book and like brought that up to me this weekend. He's like, "This is such a good question."
That's my favorite book of all time, too. It's a great.
Um, I mean, I think I'll give you the same truth that is going to be the different sides of the coin. One, every single thing on earth is hackable. With enough time, money, motivation, anything can be hacked. The other side of that coin that I think is overlooked is that you can make things unhackable. Like you can make them to the point where they're undesirable to hack.
Mhm.
And that's really like the goal. Like everyone talks about, oh, is this system hackable? Yes. The answer is always 100% definitively yes. Right. So like I think getting over and like having society kind of understand that, right? That like that we were never built a perfect system, and setting that expectation is unattainable, and we should just quit now, right? But the expectation really is like, and my goal is to get this to the point where no normal person is going to get hacked because the incentives just aren't there. The level of effort it's going to take to, steal my grandma's money out of her bank account is going to be so extraordinarily high. So it's like, why would I do that? If I'm going to put that level of effort, I'm going to target Bank of America and try to get like something worthwhile, right? It's going to
Right.
cost me $20 million to create this exploit, so I better get at least $30 million out of the hack, or it's a
Yeah.
it's a bad ROI. So like really the goal in cybersecurity is not to make unhackable systems, but it's to raise the bar high enough where that nobody wants to try to jump over it.
Hmm. That's really interesting. I've actually never thought about that before, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, I think, anyone with enough resources and time and the right team, the right technology, like you said, like could theoretically hack anything, right?
Yeah, I've been on the other end of that. It's hackable. For sure. We give us time and money, we will hack it.
Awesome. Well, that kind of brings us to our last two questions, which is the first of those is, what is something you want to tell me?
That I want to tell you. I mean, I don't really know deeply what your career goals are, but I would say like, you know, keep striving for them. It seems like you have a lot of grit already, and you're gonna get told no way more than you would get told yes. Like to get to where Authenticate is now and just where I am in my career, like I've so many people have told me it wouldn't work, that it's crazy, that I'm stupid, that whatever, right? Like this is a dumb idea. So just like, I don't know, if you truly believe in it, see it all the way through to the end until you get the answer yourself.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And the last question is, what is something you want to tell the viewers?
That's very open-ended. Do you mean like a big life takeaway or
It could be a life takeaway. It could be a plug to use Authenticate. It could be whatever you want. It could be both of those things.
yeah, I mean I guess the two that I would say is like do the hard thing when presented with multiple choices, pick the hard one. I think JFK nailed it when he's like, we do this, we go to the moon, this, that, and the other, not because it is easy, but it's because it is hard. I think it just leads a more enriching life. There's science to support that too if you care about science. And yeah, I mean, I would encourage people to look at what we're doing at Authenticate, give us feedback. We love naysayers because they push us harder, but also it is a better future going forward. So follow us, see what we're up to, and try to help.
Awesome. Well, Chad, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And that concludes this episode of the Data Room.
It's been a pleasure.